Scripture reading this morning for Brother Trenton's lesson will come from Hebrews 12, 5 through 11. Hebrews 12, 5 through 11. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as to sons. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens, and scourges every son whom he receives. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness. Now so chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
Okay. All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all out this morning. Happy Father's Day to the fathers. I'll echo what Jeff had said earlier. It's very good to see everyone out with us this morning. This morning's lesson is going to be about David. On Mother's Day, the mothers had their lesson, and so it's Father's Day, and so the fathers are going to get their lesson. This is kind of an adaptation from the book that is written by John Eldredge, a book called Fathered by God, which is a good listen if you've got Audible, not too long, but it's a good read. It's a good listen if you don't want to read the book and you can just listen to it. But throughout the course of that book, he kind of equates a man's life in several different stages, going through several seasons throughout his life. And each of those seasons creates a change in a person, creates a change in this boy that goes from being a boy all the way up to being a man, and several of those things throughout his life. And something that we think about in this life, and we we'll think about some people, perhaps in our own lives, that we've seen that have kind of pulled themselves up from their bootstraps. They're kind of like that self-made man, right? And that's something that he's talking about here, is that that self-made man, that person that has basically started with nothing and has accumulated all these things, or has worked and through the sweat of his brow and through his efforts has been able to figure things out in this life. And that person is kind of like put on a pedestal, right? But something that he says is that we often speak of a man who's done this successfully as a self-made man. The appellation is usually spoken with a sense of admiration, but really it should be said in the same tone that we might use of the dearly departed, or of a man who recently lost an arm, with sadness and regret. What the term really means is an orphaned man who figured out how to master some part of his life on his own. This is that self-made man that maybe didn't have a father figure in his life that was able to teach him all of the things that he needed to know. Well, is that not true of every man that's out there that does not have God in his life? And even though he might be successful in this life, is that everything? I think we would understand and know that it is not everything, that there is more to this life than just the things that are here present, the physical blessings that we see, the houses that we have, the cars that we have, all of these blessings, the jobs that we have, education, all of those things, right? We might be able to figure some of those things out, but what is most important is left out, which is our soul's salvation, which is what happens after this. And here we find a man named David that is fathered by God. Yes, he has an earthly father. All of us have earthly fathers, but there's lessons that his earthly father isn't quite able to give to him throughout his life that we're going to see that is given to him through God. And so the first season of life that he talks about is the beloved son. We see that David here isn't chosen for his outward appearance or his status, but for his heart. And this is the heart that Jesus even talks about, the heart of a child, right? Something that you need to be paying attention to, that there's an innocence there. Because God doesn't look at the outward appearance. Instead, he looks at the at his physical stature, because he's refused him. This is what the Lord is saying to Samuel. He says, the Lord does not see as a man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So as David is starting off in his life, he sees, he's just this little shepherd boy and was overlooked clear up until the end, right? But as God sees it, no, there's another one, and he's going to be the one. He's going to be that king. He sees not just the shepherd boy as he is, as he was then and there, but instead he sees the king that David is going to be. So the same is true even of every single person here, every single child, every single boy that's here, that God doesn't just see you for who you are right now in your adolescence. And the lessons that you're going to be learning throughout this stage is a lot to do with obedience and having that heart that's open and ready for instruction, that heart that's open and ready for someone to come through and to instill knowledge into you. And who do we need to be seeking? Well, we need to be seeking after God. God is going to be able to take care of us in that instance. He's going to be able to empower us. He's going to be able to give you all of the things that you need in this life, so that way you are able to progress from this stage and move on to the next point in your life. Because again, this is someone that, as we just read, God is our Father, and we endure the chastings of our earthly fathers for this time, for this season, because we're listening to them as they're trying their best at whatever seems best to them, because they love you. They want you to be upright and honest and diligent and all of these good things, but God more so. God more so than even your earthly father. He wants you to have a strong life. Here's another, I'll have kind of a quote from the book just about with every single slide here. And here's the one for this one. It says, "You are the son of a kind, strong, and engaged father. A father wise enough to guide you in the way, generous enough to provide you for your journey, offering to walk with you every step of the way." And this is perhaps the hardest thing for us to believe, for us to really believe deep down in our hearts, so that it changes us forever. It changes the way that we approach each day. When we have this understanding that we are God's beloved son, that can change the way that we look at things. When we see that as that I'm the beloved child of God, the ultimate, the Creator, He's looking at me as if I'm beloved, as if I'm worthy. Yes. Why? Because He sees your heart. And He chooses you for where you are, not for where you are now. But He chooses you because of who you can become in Him. So know that you are beloved. Know that you are worthy for the calling of your life, which is to serve God through Christ. The next stage that He has is called the cowboy stage. And while that doesn't necessarily resonate with me, perhaps others that have lived more on a farm. I lived beside a farm and I helped put up hay. We lived on my aunt and uncle's farm for a year while our house was being built, but I was about 5 years old at the time, so there's no chance of me doing really any chores then. And even then, whenever we'd go out and visit, I was just kind of, an obstacle in the way, or I would get my cousin's BB gun and I'd go and shoot the chickens. Just one pump on that BB gun and just enough to get the chickens to jump up. But I was no cowboy. I didn't go out into the field and try and wrangle a bull. I didn't do any of that stuff. But instead, there is this stage in our life, though, where we have to have kind of like a territory given to us. We have to have some sort of a proving ground. And this is very important for a child. This is very important. This is the stage that you're coming out of, understanding that you are beloved, that you are loved, that you are needed, that you are cared for. And then you get to this point where, okay, now there's going to be some changes. And here's going to be a small portion of something that I'm going to entrust you, a small territory that you're going to be entrusted with, and there's things that you need to learn how to do. And this is the time that you can learn how to do these things. And this is David, as he's a shepherd, right? And as he's going through these things, he says in 1 Samuel 17:37, he says, "Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." So his proving grounds was out there in the field with his father's sheep. That was what his territory was, to go out into this area. Here you go. Go tend to my sheep. Take care of them. Go take care of your brothers. Here's a package. Go give this to your brothers and help them out. You're not ready for the war yet, as his father's thinking, right? But you can at least deliver this package to your brothers who are out in the war and who are about to fight these Philistines. But here he is in these proving grounds, and he has been delivered from the paw of the lion, the paw of the bear. He's overcoming those challenges. And we might be like, what? Overcoming fighting off a bear, fighting off a lion to save those sheep? That's intense. That's a little crazy. I never did that. All I did was, I had, these were the roads that we were allowed, living out in the country. You're driving on a four-wheeler, you were allowed to go so far. This is your territory. Don't go and make a mess of any other people's stuff, but, this is your area. Well, his area found him facing a giant. And the only reason why he was able to face that giant was because his confidence was developed in the wilderness by tending to his father's sheep, by fighting those lions and fighting those bears. Whatever challenges you're facing in this life, there are lessons that you can learn, but there are things that's going to be building up your confidence so that way you can rely on God and see that He has carried you through all of these other things. Give Him the praise and glory that He's carried you through those things, and allow that confidence to take you further, that God is going to continue to carry you through this life. He will continue to be with you to overcome those obstacles, because God's going to often call us to face those giants. He's going to call on us to do those things, but by trusting in His power, we're going to be able to develop the courage to fight through those things. This is that time of adventure. This is that time of hard work and taking risks so that we can learn those lessons. This is the time for a young man, as John says, to stop saying, "Why is life so hard?" He takes the hardness as the call to fight, to rise up and to take it on. There's something about a boy that's willing to try and overcome those obstacles, overcome those moments where he's been kind of pushed off to the side. He's able to see, you know what, this is difficult for me, but I'm going to keep on pursuing this until I figure it out. And if you trust in God, He'll guide you through that season of your life. We move on to the next stage of life, which is called the warrior stage. And this is where David learns leadership and strategy that makes him better than his predecessor, makes him better than Saul, earning him some hardship along the way and some persecution by the same because of his jealousy. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 7 and 8, it says, "So the women sang as they danced and said, 'Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very angry, and the saying displeased him. And he said, 'They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed only thousands? Now what more can he have but the kingdom?' So Saul eyed David from that day forward." He gave him that stink eye. He was looking at him at that point. He wasn't just watching him. He started trying to take his life at that point. He started plotting against him. And we see that David, going through all of these time frames, he became this warrior. And that we understand that there is a mission in our life that we need to own up to, that we have a cause. There is something that is worth our valiant effort, worth our fighting for. We have to become this warrior. We have to go through this and learn how to fight for what is right. We can't go through this stage. We cannot go on to the next stage until we master this one. Because if we do, then we're only tripping ourselves up. This is what he says about this stage in his life. It says, "The recovery of the warrior is absolutely crucial to the recovery of a man. All else rests on this. For you will have to fight, my brothers, for everything you desire and everything you hold dear in this world. Despite what you feel or what you may have been told, you have a warrior's heart because you bear the image of God, and He will train you to become a great warrior if you let Him. So think about that, is that we do have this warrior's heart. How many times, how many battles were fought because that was God's direction? There was something that was worth fighting for, including that battle that David fought with Goliath. Because that man was, what was he saying? He was saying terrible things about God. He was blaspheming God. He was blaspheming His people, His chosen people. And he says, that's worthy to fight for my Lord, to fight for my God. And He is worthy of us fighting for Him. Throughout all this time frame, it helped David to develop his patience throughout these things. It allowed him to develop perseverance and dependence on God for deliverance. We could read in 2 Samuel 22. It's basically the same psalm, same as Psalm 18 there. Just a few word changes. I think he kind of honed it in a little bit better maybe later on. But how many times was he chased down? How many times was he sought after by Saul? He gone through all this time. He slayed his 10,000s, and he became a real warrior. But there was something else that was going on, and it caused him to really rely on God. He was under attack, and he had to learn how to defend himself, not by necessarily his own hands, but through God's deliverance. Because there's going to be times where we have to fight, and there's going to be times where we have to retreat, but we all, throughout all of it, must rely on God to see us through. God's going to refine us through challenging seasons and through some difficult people in our life. He uses trials to equip us for our calling. He uses these trials to better us so that we can go out into this world and take on the challenges that He's set before us to be a warrior for the kingdom that He's placed us in. If we are baptized into Christ, we are part of God's kingdom. Are we not? Are we fighting that fight? Are we going out and battling as we should? James 1 verses 2 through 4 says, "My brethren, count it joy when you fall into these various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." There's going to be things that we have to go through, and it's going to be a pain. But we need to learn from that. We need to receive that instruction from God and reflect on those lessons and learn from those mistakes that we might have made and allow ourselves to overcome those the next time, knowing better how to deal with them. And once we have gotten through the warrior stage, now we enter into this lover stage. And so we see that David has experienced deep love for God throughout his life. He is relying on God. And this is what he says in the 116th Psalm, verses 1 and 2. He says, "I love the Lord, because He has heard my voice and my supplications, because He has inclined His ear to me. Therefore I will call upon Him as long as I live." Now, what's interesting about David is that he has written so many things, and he has written a lot of psalms, and this is a man who's, has that poetry to him. And so this is one of the things that is said of him, this awakening of the heart that we need to have about ourselves. And this could be manifested as a love of poetry, a love of nature, or a love of music. All of those things will happen. And eventually there's going to be romance that is introduced. It says the great divide, though, lies between men and lovers as lovers and men as consumers. So here he is. Here is the distinguishing characteristics. We have lovers and we have consumers. Does he seek her out? Does he long for her because he really yearns for her? To meet some need in his life? Or is he looking for this need of validation where she makes him feel like a man? Or mercy, or simply sexual gratification? That man is a consumer. But the lover, on the other hand, wants to fight for her, wants to protect her, wants to make her life better, wants to fill her heart in every way that he can. And that is because he's learned how to love from God, because of the love that God has given to him in all aspects of his life. He's saying, if this is the love that I receive, then I need to also have this love for those that are around me. And if we don't look at it that way, if we have not mastered all of these other things and have not given God first place in our life and said, he is worthy of me fighting for, ultimately, and giving him everything, then we're not going to get to this point here in our life where we're able to fight for the romance in our life, for our wife, for our significant other that deserves this kind of love. And we see that he fails in this too, in this aspect. David's sin with Bathsheba wasn't based in love, was it? And we could turn to 2 Samuel and look at this whole story. But I think that we all know the story, right? We all know that story that takes place between David and Bathsheba and how he lusts after her and he calls for her. And it doesn't just end there. But once she becomes pregnant with his child, then he starts down this path of trying to cover it up and hide those mistakes that mistake that he had made. Ultimately, it ends with the death of her husband. Ultimately, it ends with the death of their child. He wasn't concerned about love in that aspect, was he? When he was doing that, when he was thinking about those things, that wasn't love, that was the consumer in him. We see that he was disciplined and he was restored. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13, so David said to Nathan, I've sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, the Lord also has put away your sin. You shall not die, but there was repercussions. There was consequences to this. We see that even if we do mess up, even if we do make mistakes in this aspect, we can still be reconciled. We can still make things right. And we can still do better. And we can change the way that we love from this self-gratifying love, instead to a love that God demonstrates as he demonstrates it to us, this unconditional love. And we can become a lover, a true lover, and not just, another man, another man that is just filled with consuming all the lusts of this life. And having learned all these lessons, now we get, was one more point there. God's desire is for us to love him. And we do, and when we do, we are then able to love those around us, as we see from 1 John chapter 4, where it's talking about that love. But once we've learned all of these things, once we've learned up to this point, learning from the Father above that since he is a God of love, that we can then move on into being the king. And this is the second to last stage of these seasons of life that John writes about. And he says this, at this stage, the character, the man in his wholeheartedness has been shaped enough to be entrusted with power, with money, with influence. And this is a beautiful, demanding stage that requires wisdom and selflessness. And he says this, you don't want to be a king. Trust me, it's not something to be coveted. Only the ignorant covet a throne. Augustine didn't want the job because he knew what it would cost him. He felt a profound inadequacy to the task. He wanted a quiet, simple life, but he accepted the role on behalf of others. Becoming a king is something we accept only as an act of obedience. The posture of the heart is, in a mature man, is reluctant to take the throne, but willing to do it on behalf of others. And we won't do this correctly unless we've learned all these lessons up to this point. There's so many lessons that we need to learn. As we see in Psalm, if you'll turn with me there, Psalm 75, God sets up and establishes those whom he will. Psalm chapter 75, or the 75th Psalm, as I should say, verses 6 and 7. It says, for exaltation comes neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. This is God that does these things. And even as David had become the next king, Who was it that was establishing this kingdom? It was God. The people wanted it, yes. They were the ones that were living this life, and they said, God, we don't want you as our king anymore. We want a man as our king. We're tired of listening to you through these prophets. We want to be like just like everyone else. And so we want a king. And so they got Saul. And what happened to him? He became corrupted. He didn't have this idea. He wasn't obedient as he should be. He didn't learn the lessons that he should have learned. He wasn't the man that God needed him to be. He betrayed God. He was disobedient to God. We see David here is more willing to accept these responsibilities. But he needed these qualities from the earlier seasons of life to be prepared to handle the responsibility of obedience, as he would have learned. The courage that he had whenever he faced Goliath and other hardships throughout his life. The faith that he had, that reliance on God. The humility he would have had to have given somebody else that time to have not taken Saul's life when he had opportunity. The grace that he had in that moment also, to have been forgiving and to have, again, let Saul's life go. That is a difficult thing, to think of your enemy and you have them in the clutches of your hand. You could do with them as you will, and he had the grace to let him go. And then love. The love that he needed to have. It takes all of these things to be a leader. Do we have any of these qualities? Am I still working on these things? I mean, I don't think that we'll ever be perfected in any of those categories, but we need to look at that list and say to ourselves, I need to be working on myself in these aspects. I don't need to be seeking to be a king. I don't want to impose myself into this kingship, but I want God. I'll take what he gives me. And if God places me in this, then I need to be obedient to the fullest of my ability. I need to have the courage. I need to have faith. I need to have humility. I need to have grace, and I need to have love in order to do what he has set before me. And so if you find yourself in this stage in your life, these are some qualities that we need to think about. It takes every last one of them. And then finally, we have this stage of the sage. This is that stage where you've got the gray-haired man of wisdom that is kind of helping to cultivate the next generation. The silver-haired sage steps aside to let younger men carry the load, but this man is sought after for his wisdom and counsel. Young men, we need to be seeking the counsel of those that are these silver-haired sages, of these individuals that have gone through life, that have a lot of experience, that have a lot of knowledge, that have experience in their life, things that we've never even seen, things that we've never done before, but we can go to them and ask them these questions. And he goes through several, stories, like he talks about Lord of the Rings as one of his examples, how Gandalf kind of helps cultivate Aragorn into the king that he needed to be. Then he talks about Arthur, King Arthur, and how he needed Merlin there to kind of help cultivate him. We think about Simba, a kid's cartoon. We think about Simba and how he wouldn't have come back to be the king of the Pride Lands if Rafiki hadn't come over and smacked him over the head with his stick, right? And kind of helped cultivate some wisdom, give him some encouragement along the way. We need someone in our life that is smacking us over the head with a stick, that stick of wisdom, passing that on, helping us, helping the next generation. And we need to develop ourselves to get to that point that we can also then pass that information on down to, worthy of someone coming to us. That's not something that just happens. That's something that happens because people see your example, see that you have something that they desire, that they need, and that's why they come to you and ask you questions. That's why they come to you for guidance. Because they see God and God's wisdom demonstrated in your life, and that's what they need. You see, David, he lived that full life. He lived a life filled with many trials, complications, failures, victories. And all this experience is something that he can share and does with his son. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. He shares that experience. He gives some lessons there to his son. He even prepares him. He had a lot of the supplies ready for the temple to be built. David passed on wisdom. He passed on a legacy. He passed on a foundation of faith for the next generation. Are we ready for that? Are we building up to that stage for those that have made it to the stage? Are people coming to you and asking for advice? Are they asking you for wisdom, for counsel? And are we giving them godly counsel when they do? And not counsel of the world? Because that's the counsel that they need. That's the counsel that the people in this life need. They don't need worldly wisdom. They need godly counsel from the Scriptures, from the Bible. God's desire is that we become wise and that we then invest in the lives of the next generation, passing on what we've received. So the question is, how can men be fathered by God today? Well, first off, we need to receive love and affirmation from God. In 1 John chapter 3 and verse 1, it says, "Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called children of God." How did we become children of God? We become baptized through His Son, through Christ's burial and resurrection, or death, burial, and resurrection. Watery grave of baptism. And when we have obeyed the gospel call, we are children of God. And once we become children of God and we're entered into the kingdom, there is this adventure, and we need to embrace that adventure and the battles that we'll be facing ahead. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, it says, "We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." There is a battle that is being waged, and we need to be ready and step up to those challenges and learn from those lessons as we experience those things. And then we also need to engage with other men in a healthy brotherhood. In Titus chapter 2, verses 6 through 8. If you'll turn with me there, please. Titus chapter 2. Verses 6 through 8, it says, "Likewise, exhort the young men to be sober-minded, in all things showing yourself to be a pattern of good works and doctrine, showing integrity, reverence, and incorruptibility." There is something that we need to do to build each other up. We need to engage with each other in this manner. And we need to do this at not just, one age, but at multiple ages. Multiple generations gathering together so that we can learn these experiences from each other and we can cultivate the next generations. And then we can be led by godly examples. Are we getting together as we ought to? As we can, as we have opportunity? And it doesn't just have to be, at the men's Bible study or anything like that. We can get together at any point. And let's try to make something happen. But that is a good opportunity that we do have every single month. And Kayla pointed out that I've got the dates wrong on the bulletin, so I'll have to fix those. But we know that that's going on. Let's engage with each other. Let's be there for each other. And finally, God has a plan for your life. You need to pray about it, pursue it. Psalm 32, verse 8, "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eye." Are we praying to God for His guidance? Are we allowing Him to guide us through this life? So in conclusion, God fathers us based on our heart. He sees who we are becoming, not just an outward appearance or the performance of where we are now. That wilderness, battles, and even failures are used by God to refine us and equip us as we go through those struggles in this life. We need these things, these qualities: obedience, courage, faith, humility, grace, and love. These things are developed throughout the seasons, all of these seasons of our lives. We need those. And we need to work on those things. Am I failing in one of these? Am I failing in multiple of these? Do I have any of them down? I need to be working on those things. So the question that I'll ask is, maybe you haven't become a Christian. Maybe you haven't become a child of God today. And I know throughout the lesson it's been mainly geared towards men, but God's willing to father everyone, whether you're a guy or a girl. He wants to lead you through this life to Him in the afterlife. Are you willing to be fathered by God? If you are, please let us know how we can help, whether that's by being baptized or whether that's by confessing sins or needing just the prayers of the congregation. Let us know how we can help by taking a seat on the front as we stand and sing.